Our top 5 wide receivers in the 2023 NFL Draft coming to you right after this. Next up on our 2023 NFL Draft preview, positionally, we move on from quarterbacks to the people the quarterbacks throw to, and that is the wide receivers. Now, after putting our list together and talking about it a bit, we realized there's a lot of talent in this wide receiver class. I think we're in agreement that it doesn't feel like there's one like alpha dog, like gotta have it wide receiver one that's like that type of a guy. But there's a lot of guys that could be wide receiver ones are definitely going to come into the league as like probably solid wide receiver twos to start, maybe wide receiver threes working their way up to wide receiver twos. But there is a ton of talent here, a ton of guys we liked, which actually made putting together a top 5 list,
it was
pretty
tough.
difficult.
Yeah. It was pretty tough. I mean, there was a lot of wide receivers that we felt it was hard to come up with our top 5 because we felt like some of them could have made our top 5, but also I think that also shows that there's going to be a lot of good talent in like the second and third, fourth rounds of this draft. As far as like, let's just do a little bit honorable mentions. I liked A.T. Perry from Wake Forest. He's 6'3". I think he measured at 6'3.5" at the combine. He looks like he can definitely be like a deep threat guy. Also, he gets some passes, like screen passes, and he's a pretty strong runner after the catch. But the big thing about him is he ran under a 4.5 at 6'3.5", which is the fastest time by anyone from his size in the draft that I could see. So he's someone that I really like. So I think that's like a guy, if you get him in like the third round, that'd be good. I also like the game tape of guys like Michael Wilson. I know he had injury issues, but just the way he plays bigger than he looks. So I liked that. And then there's a couple other guys like even I liked Dell and Downs, but I don't know. There's something about them where I just didn't see enough to say like I don't like spoiler alert. I didn't put them in my top 5. And I couldn't really. There's players I like that are ranked much lower than them. I actually liked more than them. Maybe from a production standpoint, they were better, but based on film and stuff, I kind of like them more. It made it difficult.
I kind of felt like Dell and Downs were kind of the same, where they're just like touchdown machines, good red zone guys.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously had ability in the open field, but
they're
but
both
definitely
small.
more red zone.
A lot of small guys. A lot of small guys this year. Under 6 foot or under guys.
Right. But yeah, I mean, a couple like you said, honorable mention guys that didn't make our top 5, but let's get into our actual top 5. How about that?
Let's do it.
All
we
right.
got some surprises, I think.
Yeah, I think
right off the bat.
Yeah, and I'll claim the first surprise here. Number 5 I have is Dante Demas out of Maryland. So watch, and basically for these we just kind of go through some highlight tapes and read up on them a little bit. Just from watching his highlight tapes though, I loved how he looked. I mean, big dude, I believe like 6'3", 6'4", somewhere around there, 217. I thought he had really good hands. He seemed to outrun a lot of people on deep shots. He's, I didn't see a lot of just like fine route running, like shorter type stuff. I saw a lot of slants, maybe some out routes, but I didn't see a lot of like precise route running. So I don't know if he's going to be that type of guy.
Yeah.
He might just kind of be find a way to get open and get it to him. Good hands, good concentration. A lot to like about him. And then I looked at his stats and I just kind of saw that this last season he only had like 22 catches for 233 yards, only one touchdown. Yeah. I know in 2021 he had I believe he had like 500 some yards and like
505 games with 3 touchdowns.
And because I know he got hurt halfway through the season, so that would have really been potentially his breakout year where we'd have seen those numbers you were expecting this year, and then I don't know what happened to him this year. But it's unfortunate. And I think that's a lot of what people are kind of looking at when they're pushing him down a little bit is just the stats coming off this last season and just the fact that he came off that knee injury. Then you kind of got to wonder about his route running skills and ability to gain separation. So, but overall though, I just loved his athletic ability that I saw from him.
Yeah, this was a guy that I also really liked while looking the film. And if I just looked at just highlights and I wouldn't have looked into attributes or anything like that, I think I would have been pretty on board with you. I just like his length. He's lengthy, long arms. He kind of reminds me, and he's bigger. He kind of reminds me of Randy Moss's type of like body type, I guess,
Right.
like
Obviously
lengthy
not.
and tall.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not saying like reminds me of Randy Moss. I'm just saying from like his body physically look to him. And I don't know. And like you said, I mean, he has some speed for his size, and the way he brought the ball down. He can go up and grab the ball. He had strong hands. That's one thing that I really noticed with him is he had strong hands when he win 50-50 balls. Also, so I really did like him. Again, once I saw the stats, I was like 12 games played, 233 yards. Like, what did he like barely play? Or I didn't look into it enough myself. But it is somewhat encouraging to see that the year before he did have 5 games before he got injured, 5 games where he did have over 100 yards a game and 3 touchdowns. So he has it in there. I don't know what happened this past season, but like you said, like this is a guy that when you look at him on film, he kind of just jumps out at you for a little bit, all the way to the point where you put him in the top 5.
Yeah.
So
I might get
he could be that big sleeper, man.
right. Might get laughed at for that, but hey, it's just kind of what I was feeling.
Hey, man, you
As
gotta
for
go
the
with your gut
combine,
sometimes.
for the combine for him, 40-yard dash was a 4.57. So obviously that doesn't show the speed that I noticed, but a lot of times
What was his height at the combine?
6'3".
6'3", so 6'3", 4.57. Like no one's like that's not too bad.
Right. But 35.5 5-inch vert jump, 10.3 broad. So a lot to like. They obviously NFL Network or NFL isn't very high on them, but I don't know. I personally think there's a lot to like with Dante
Yeah, I saw it
Demas.
in the highlights too. And that's another one example. That's a A.T. Perry 5 or 6'3.5", and he ran less than a 4.5. So that's like another guy to look at. And then another honorable mention before. I also like Rashee Rice a lot too, even though he's a little older. But yeah, to mine, Quentin Johnston, the guy who is at this point probably considered most people's number one. At least a lot of mocks and stuff like that have him going number one. He's a guy that I do like. Like I like everything. I see what everybody sees in him. He's really big. He's faster size. We didn't get to see him at the combine, but he can jump out of the gym. I know we'll bring his combine stuff up here pretty quick. Another thing I'm going to get this PFF stuff up here real quick. Oh, you guys combine up?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't run, so we don't know much about that. But as for jumping, 40.5-inch vertical jump and 11.2 broad jump. So pretty good there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the guy jumps out of the gym. He's a guy who's for his size, he's very athletic. He's like one of those upside type of players. You can see him burn some people, especially, which is crazy with his size. The thing that kind of throws me off with him, with his size, I just don't see him pinpointing the ball. A lot of people want to talk about, I see some people talking about DeAndre Hopkins when they look at him, and I don't see near that kind of ball skills as DeAndre Hopkins at all. So I just feel like he's that raw guy. He's that guy that you're banking on his potential more than like what's he going to do right when he comes in, because he does that size. He could end up being a freak. I wish he would around the 40 just to see how fast he really was. But he's for sure, he could be the best wide receiver in this draft. But I'm going to go with more of an approach of guys I think are ready to go and make big plays and all that. Not big plays, but make a big impact as a rookie, hope potentially. But I'll just go through some of his PFS stuff real quick. 76.2 grade. Played 14 games, obviously. They made it to the national championship. So 60 receptions, 1,067 yards, 77 receiving grade. 73.9 versus man coverage, which is actually really good. 8 drops, 10 deep catches, pretty good. So solid stats. I mean, nothing that's coming way off the page here, but I'll give him 5, even though he's ranked 9, as you can see right there. Hey, we're taking some chances here. I don't know. I'm not seeing everything everybody else is on this guy. Maybe if he would have ran like under a 4 or 5, then I probably would have had him much higher. But I don't know if I saw that on the screen.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on to number 4. You want to talk about some speed here. We'll start with my number 4. I put Jalen Hyatt at number 4. Man, if you want to just like, I know Jamie, because you started looking into these guys before I did, and you told me about him. You're like, you watch him, you're gonna like him. You watch the stats or you watch his highlight tape. First thing that jumps off is he's fast, very very fast, and this is kind of what this team is missing. It's missing because Justin Jefferson can kind of do it all, right? We're missing that pure deep threat wide receiver, and I think he could be it. He looks, when you watch him, he looks incredibly small. His shoulder pads look, I don't know, it's weird. He looks yeah, man. His shoulder pad just looks so big on his smaller frame, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what you expect with a guy like this. I saw some comparisons to Deshaun Jackson, which, I mean, if he could have a career like Deshaun Jackson, I'd be all for it.
That'd be
I thought he
perfect.
had good hands with the ball in his hands, great with yards after catch, breaks tackles. He's quick, quick on
Touchdown
route running,
machine.
quick to get around to get around defenders once the ball's in his hand. But yeah, I mean, watching through some highlights, I didn't see a ton of like shorter, like refined route running. So maybe there's a little bit of work to do there, but get him into a pro ready offense. And I think any offensive coordinator will be able to take this guy and sculpt him into what they want, because there's so much potential there with this kid, especially just with that speed. You can't coach speed. That's the one thing. You can teach somebody how to catch, but you can't teach him to run fast. And that's what he has. Yeah, I really liked what I saw. If the Vikings took a stab at him, I'd be fine.
Yeah. And when you look at stats, 77.4 PFF grade, which isn't anything crazy, but 67 receptions for 1,267 yards and 15 touchdowns. He was a touchdown machine, including 5 of those touchdowns, I think, came right in the Alabama game. But yeah, this is the guy that has tons of speed. Actually, I have him coming up on mine, so I'll go a little bit more into him later on my own. But 5 drops, which is fantastic. I did see him drop a pass from Will Levis at the combine. I'm like, damn it. Because this is someone I liked a lot going into before the combine, and now I'll have you put up the combine stuff, but
speed 4.4.
Speed 4.4.
Vertical jump is huge.
Vertical jump 40, 11-inch or 11-foot 3-inch broad jump. I don't know, 10-yard split. That's one of those ones that a lot of people don't do. So I don't really know what is actually super good for a 10-yard split, but I'm sure it's good. What's his height and measurements?
Yeah, they had him at 6 foot. He looked a little bit smaller than 6 foot, but
6 foot 176. Yeah. I mean,
I'll
go more into him on my part,
very lean frame, but the guy's got everything you could ask for when it comes to ability, and you can just kind of, hopefully teach the rest. But the one thing, with him is when you brought up his PFF, a lot of it was backloaded. Like for the 2 seasons before, I think he had like 200 some yards each. So this one really big breakout season, which kind of is a segue into Jackson Smith-Njigba, who your number 4 was, who a lot of people said like his main production was in 2021, obviously dealing with an injury. This season didn't play a ton, but anyway, so that's kind of it. That's something could be a knock on both of these guys, but I'll let you take it away on why you put JSN at number 4.
So for do I have him on my PFF? What did I do with him? So yeah, for JSN, so I know he is probably, at least at the combine, they wanted to kind of say he was like the most polished route runner. I guess it probably would have been between him and Jordan Addison. Part of this thing that I'm looking at while doing our top 5 is that I'm also trying to look for fits for the Vikings, and I think we could use a slot receiver type of player, but it's not number 1 priority. It's not the thing that's going to like make us a lot different than Justin Jefferson, I think, because Justin Jefferson can do pretty much everything, but especially like he's kind of can be that guy who can get those the slot catches, stuff like that. And that's kind of what I saw from JSN. It was just, when you watch his tape and stuff, it's all from the slot. You don't really see him going and beating anyone vertical. I know he's had all these injury problems on top of all of that. Though I know I've seen Garrett Wilson and Olave. I've talked about this on the show before. They've talked about like which one of them 3 were the most athletic, and they all said JSN. So part of you is like, all right, if he can come in here and just like you would mention, I'm sure you're going to talk about it even more later, but Justin Jefferson coming out of the draft, it was like, oh, this guy's a slot guy. Well, we found out he was a lot more than that. And the same thing could be said with JSN, but the difference is I just didn't see any of it really out of him at Ohio State, just burning people deep. though he could be an incredible slot receiver type of player, and I think there's a good chance that he is. I would still take him. I mean, if we picked him at 23, I'd be like, all right, like you, no matter what, he's a good player. I'll take a guy who's a really good wide receiver over a guy that just is what you kind of want out of your second wide receiver, I guess. But yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
and
Moving
the
on
leading run
to
is 40, so we already knew that.
right. Moving on to our number 3. I will start. We got Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC. Obviously playing with Jamie's favorite quarterback and hopeful Vikings quarterback down the road, and Caleb Williams. I know this was a guy that, when we were talking about it, like you kind of said as well, they felt like he was probably one of the more polished receivers coming out of the draft. First thing I noticed is with a lot of these guys, their speed. I mean, they're receivers; they got to be fast, but their speed really jumps off the page. You did see a lot of route running with him. I thought I saw a lot of like tight route running, quickness with his feet to get out of breaks. Especially off the line of scrimmage. Really good at keeping his balance. I think there's a couple plays where he got bumped around and he was able to keep his feet and run.
Yeah.
How big is he? I feel like he's decent size. What they
Throw
have
the
him at?
combine
5'11"
thing
only.
up.
Okay.
Yeah. Throw the combine.
5'11", but I just think there's a lot to like with him. I saw a comparison on NFL Network where they compared him to his NFL comparison was a Tyler Lockett. Like you talked about, if you want to talk about the Vikings getting a guy, I think this would be a guy that fit with the roster well, because Tyler Lockett, we know him as that deep threat guy who can, who does have a route running ability. But yeah, just overall, when I watched this tape, I really liked what I saw. And if the Vikings were to take a shot at a guy like this as well, I'd be 100% down. And I agree with what you said about Jackson Smith-Njigba. I feel like he wouldn't fit the Vikings very well, just with kind of what we have. But you can't say that about Jordan Addison. I think he would be a great fit for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna be going into Jordan Addison even more whenever he comes up for me. Anyways, Jalen Hyatt for me. Obviously, we already showed the combine. We already did the PFF stuff. Like Casey said, this is exactly the type of wide receiver that we're looking for. He's the boomer bust type wide receiver people are talking about. I think that's Quentin. I think it's more Quentin Johnson than him, but people want to say Jalen Hyatt's like that boomer bust guy. And I mean, he is kind of smaller, 6 foot, but I mean, that's solid size, 6 foot, 176, from a guy that you want to be your deep threat. Obviously there's guys out there like Tyreek Hill, who's 5'10", and he can be extremely effective. And speaking about Tyreek Hill, that's who Jalen Hyatt kind of reminds me of. I think Tyreek Hill's obviously going to be faster, but the thing I like about Jalen Hyatt is not just that he's a really good deep threat, because when he has scored those touchdowns, he is wide open every time. Like, it's not a lot of like even 50-50 balls or anything. He's far away from his defender. And not just that, but he can take screen passes to the house. He's a guy that you can just get the ball in his hands and he could end up breaking one to the house, just like Tyreek Hill. And that's what I like about Jalen Hyatt. That's what separates him to me compared to even a guy like Jameson Williams last year, where even Jameson Williams, obviously insane deep threat type of guy, but that's kind of all I saw from Jameson Williams. I didn't really see the guy who gets the ball in his hands and he breaks out for an 80-yard touchdown for taking a screen to the house, and I see that from Jalen Hyatt. So that's why I really like Jalen Hyatt. I think he's the best fit for the Vikings, on top of, I just think he's that talented, and he proved it. He proved his athletic ability at the combine on top of all that stuff. And he's a guy, I think a lot of mock drafts, or not a lot of people, they are looking at him as a guy that should be like a 3rd round talent or 2nd round talent. I don't think that's true. I think he's a 1st round talent, and I think he's going to be drafted in the 1st round. And I think a lot of people are probably going to think he's overdrafted, but I think next year he'll show that he wasn't. Yeah. That's my guess. He's getting that hype for sure, I think.
Jumping back to Addison here quick, though. I just wanted to go over some of his stats at the combine. 4.49 40 time, 34-inch vertical jump, and a 10'2" broad jump. So
yeah, and he's somebody that was not as impressive at the combine. So
right.
he's falling because of the combine.
which I don't necessarily agree with because I just think he has a ton of talent. But
Yeah, I'm gonna get into him a little bit more. I'll bring up his PFF stuff once I have him on my slide, which could be next. We'll find out. But
yeah,
we'll
so
find out
going
right
on to
now.
number two, let's start with mine. I had Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State as my number two. A lot of things that Jamie said, I do kind of echo. Watching him, I think I had that in my notes that I took down too. It's just a lot of slot routes, not much outside. But I mean, it's Ohio State wide receivers, man. Something about them, they always translate well to the NFL. I thought speed, good hands, good yards after catch ability. Good concentration to make contested catches. Not, I mean, I'm sure you'll on the PFF. Did he have a lot of stats or a lot of drops? I mean, he strikes me
Did
as
I
a
bring
type
his PFF? Here, I'll bring his PFF up
because
right
he didn't strike
now.
me as a type that would have a ton of drops. Yeah, I just think he's super athletic. Played in a great conference, so playing against a lot of really good competition. Yeah, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba. Again, I don't think he's a good fit for the Vikings, but I think whatever team gets him, is going to get a really, really solid receiver
Yeah.
who will just come in right away as a solid slot receiver. Maybe they'll be able to sculpt him into something a little bit more than that.
Game played. Obviously, he only played 3 last year.
Right. Which
Coming off
is
of
why I said with
injury.
him, it's a lot of one big season. Outside of that, he didn't
And
have a
it was
whole
a
lot
huge
going on.
season,
So
man. 95 receptions, 1,600 yards,
almost, yeah,
and
9
9
touchdowns.
touchdowns with a PFF grade of 91.7. 0 drops. Well, he only
Well, this
played.
last year.
Yeah, that was last year. I wish I could see the year before. Otherwise, yeah, deep catches, obviously 0. I really wish we were able to see 2021 to see where his drops were at and his deep catches. That's another thing is like you just don't really see the vertical. It seems like he could be the guy who he could end up being like an elite slot type of guy. And then maybe he shows us more than we know with his vertical. But for now, like I didn't see anything vertical. It seems like he can do everything really good, really well, but you don't see much from him vertically, which to me, especially for the Vikings, I just feel like we need more than that because we have a guy like well, obviously we have Justin Jefferson who can do all of it, and he is kind of like that guy, like, hey, put him in the slot or have him do a cross route and get him the ball that way. But obviously we also have TJ Hawkinson now who can kind of be the guy where you put him in the middle of the field and just get some receptions out of him. So it would be nice to have like a true, what would that be called? Would it be an X wide receiver or wide receiver? I don't know, but a guy that can just burn players and get people down deep. So yeah, that's kind of how we feel about him,
Yeah,
but he still, I mean, he doesn't mean he's not going to be a fantastic player.
absolutely.
So Zay Flowers, so he's been interesting because I think going into this season, he was probably one of the favorites to be one of the top players. Right after the season ended, he wasn't as popular, and now he's kind of making himself his way back up. But right away, there's no question this guy is an absolute spark plug. I mean, you get the ball and if you get the ball in his hands, I mean, there's no one else in this draft that has the moves and the elusiveness as Zay Flowers does. And not just that, he has enough speed and enough route running ability to burn people long as well. The big thing with him is his size. That's the thing that worries me. I would be happy as hell if we picked him because I feel like we could utilize someone like that. But then I just think of guys like Tavon Austin and other players kind of like him who come into the league, and you don't really see a lot of players his size excel, even if they have all those abilities because of their height, it feels like. But I don't know, man. I feel like this guy could be different in that area. And if he is what a lot of us thinks he could be, that would be massive for our team, I think.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into some of his stats here because that's a good segue into our number ones, where
Yeah.
I put Zay Flowers as my number one. And again, I mean, it's kind of a broken record repeating a lot of things that Jamie said. But the first thing I noticed, I mean, I think he measured in at 5'9" at the combine, so pretty small,
Yeah.
but he's fast. And that's, again, if you're looking at what the Vikings need, that's kind of what they need. They need just a pure speed guy. I thought he had quick feet, good. I thought he was really polished route runner. Again, another guy with really good balance. Good hands and concentration on some contested catches that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Just overall, man. And like you said, spark plug. I took notes as a dog. I put him down as a capital DOG dog just because of the way that he plays out there for being his size as well.
Mhm.
I mean, again, played at Boston College, a little bit of a smaller school, so
Right,
will a
right.
lot of his stuff translate to the NFL? I would think so, but I just thought I saw a lot of polish there, and I see why this guy was getting a ton of hype and probably will continue to get hype as we get closer to the draft.
And I wanna also say, like, when I look at the kind of wide receivers we need, or at least that I want, it is gonna be that vertical deep threat guy, but other than that, I feel like we're missing that kind of gadget player as well, someone that we were hoping we'd see more out of Jalen Reagor last year.
Yeah,
And
that
I
could
think
be a
that's something that
decent
we're missing.
comparison,
Someone that you can
actually.
just get the ball to in a short situation and they can make plays out of it every time, if not bringing it to the house, you know? And Zay
Absolutely.
Flowers is the perfect example for that guy, but that's not all he seems to be. He can also bring that vertical to it.
Yeah. Looking at his combine, 4.4 240, 35.5 vertical jump, and a 10'7" broad jump. Um, yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say about him. Fast, like you said, kind of a gadget guy, can do it all. Quick feet. I like him.
Yeah, and just looking at some of his stats here, this past season, I think he's kind of fell a little bit because of his drops. 9 drops, did have 12 deep catches, which is fantastic. 75.5 PFF grade with 78 receptions, 1,077 yards, and 12 touchdowns. So I mean, the stats still show that he does pretty good.
And you're betting on potential with guys like this as well.
Right.
Like all the skill set is there now. Just bring him into the league and refine it a little bit.
Yeah, and like you said, he played for Boston College, not a huge school or anything like that, but he also is, he's still playing with the Boston College. I don't even know who the quarterback was, but he also doesn't get a guy like for instance Hyatt got spoiled with quarterbacks. I feel like even when Hendon Hooker went down,
Right.
and obviously Shroud with JSN, and obviously Jordan Addison with Caleb Williams. Zay Flowers didn't have that luxury of having that kind of quarterback throwing to him.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, take the floor
And
on
then
Addison.
Jordan Addison. So Jordan Addison, I think he's the number one wide receiver. I think he's the best overall wide receiver in this draft. Casey was perfect with is he the guy that I actually said that I liked his balance? Yeah, so the thing with him is his balance after the catch. When he gets hit, for some reason, he just does not go down. And it seems like he has like elite balance or something like that. I see that. I don't know what it just stuck out compared to sometimes you watch these receivers and you see something that really sticks out. And that was I'm not even looking for balance, but it was just like, holy shit, he has good balance. But just not that he's one of the most polished wide receivers in this draft, one of the best route runners. He can beat corners vertically. He's a guy that I think he's the number one rated wide receiver. I think even coming out of the season last year, people were looking at him as probably that guy. And then through the process of this offseason, he's kind of fell because of all those little things that people pick up, whether it's even the combine and stuff. I'm not falling for that. I think he is. I'm going to take the tape over his combine performance, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't living up to what people wanted to see out of a guy that might be the number one wide receiver prospect. But I think he is. I just think he's the best wide receiver in this class. And you already brought up his combine, I believe. So I'm going to bring up his stats from the last couple of years. Right here, obviously he did have Caleb Williams as his quarterback, and then the year before, I think he had Kenny Pickett because he played for Pitt, I believe. But this past season, 81.5 overall grade, 59 receptions, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns. Nothing crazy, but the year before for Pittsburgh, in 14 games, he had 100 receptions for almost 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns. Last year, by the way, 59 receptions, only 2 drops, 9 deep catches, 82.4 receiver grade,
Good against man
receiving
coverage.
grade, 76.2 grade in man coverage, which I believe was the highest we've seen out of the guys that we talked about today. Actually, Jalen Hyatt had 76.4 as well. But yeah, I don't know. I just think he's the best overall receiver. I think he's that player that is falling because of the offseason stuff that I guess he can't really control. but I think he's the guy that comes in and it's like, oh, Jordan Addison was this guy this whole time, and everybody overlooked him over because of the combine and all that other stuff. That's what my guess is with all that. But
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, as you can see, a lot of talent in this wide receiver draft, which I'm feeling like that's a thing that we've seen in the last few years. Like wide receiver is getting more and more talented with the way that, and I think now that they're seeing how much money they can make being a wide receiver, it's only upping what these receivers want to do going into the league. And obviously it's a pass first league now is kind of the way it is. So
and once
you're
I
going to see
see
a lot of
Justin
receivers
Jefferson's
drafted.
contract,
Right, for sure.
jeez.
But
And
again,
that's the
like,
thing,
is there any like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I do think the talent. I do want to say though, because I know some people say this. I do think the talent is getting better at wide receiver. I don't think you're gonna see another guy like Justin Jefferson coming in anytime soon. I don't think you're gonna see another guy like Jamar Chase coming in anytime soon. Even though they're two guys that have came in at a time when wide receivers are getting better, I do think that they are above what we're going to see even for years to come. So
Right.
so I know some people are like, maybe it's just a lot of receivers are good now. That even last Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, they were not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but they were really good, but they were not them their rookie seasons. Not even close.
For sure. But yeah, again, maybe not like a number one
boy.
big time wide receiver coming out here, but a bunch of really solid options who could develop into solid NFL players. But that's our top 5. We want to know your guys' top 5. Drop those down in the comment section below, and we'll see you guys next time on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.